Hello and welcome to another episode of the TopBin90 Podcast, episode 13. I've got two of the best MLS minds in all of Charlotte, in all of North Carolina, and all of U.S. with me today to discuss what's been going on with Charlotte. And I'll start off with you, Vaughn. How are you?
Doing fantastic. I've been itching to come on another episode. It just hasn't aligned. I'm so glad to finally be here.
Nice. Awesome. And we have Mr. Bam himself, Brian Maurer. How are you?
Doing well. Bluey, the musical for the win. I missed the game, and they get the big dub. That's the trend, man. For 3 years now, that's the trend.
Shout out Bluey, the real winner of this weekend, right? Well, awesome. Let's talk a little bit about, there's a couple of topics I want to talk about. Obviously, we're going to recap New England, the match against New England. We'll talk a little bit about some of these lineup changes that we saw with Dean Smith, which were surprising, right? Obviously, we'll talk about Pep Biel. We'll talk Patrick Agyemang. We'll preview Inter Miami and also look at where Charlotte could finish this season as well. But before we start with this recap, I kind of want to go into, the momentum heading into this match because it wasn't looking good, especially in Orlando. Vaughn, I know you had I don't want to say pleasure of being there, but you had to witness that brutal match. I guess talk to me about Charlotte FC's form heading into New England.
What form? There was no form. There was no momentum. There was no energy. I think that there was a lot of factors at play that were making the team just wasn't showing that confidence. And between the interruption of Leagues Cup, between the additions and some of the changes in the lineup, and guys just kind of being a little out of form, it's taken a bit for us to get back and think and to also find ways to win again, right?
Yeah.
Like we've been that team that's hard to beat, doesn't know how to lose. Well, it started to kind of flip on its head here when the defense gives up a few goals, offense loses its mojo. We just haven't had a solid rhythm to get into any success until this week.
Yeah, and I mean, the team has been very flat, from even Dean Smith, from offense, defensively, right? Brian, and we touched on this, we had all these quote-unquote upgrades.
Yeah.
We've looked even worse
heading
into this match.
It was 6 games without a win. It was their first 3-game losing streak of the season leading into this match. So it was just, definitely the low point of the year of the Dean Smith era. The Montreal game for me specifically stood out because we talked about it on the show last time. I fully expected the turnaround to be in that game because Dean Smith had shown a history of being able to stop the bleeding, turn around, get a result. So when I saw that loss happen, I was just like, something was very different compared to the other games because that just seemed like such a match for them to get a result in. And so that was when I really started to feel concerned. I was like, man, you couldn't have asked for a better situation to get some of these attackers going because, Montreal is one of the worst defenses in MLS right now, so you couldn't have asked for a better situation for those guys to get going in. They didn't respond, and so it was a big concern. Going into this one, another promising matchup at home, and they got the result.
Yeah.
So you got to be pleased with that.
Yeah, 100%. I think, you couldn't ask for a better match in terms of what we expected coming from Charlotte. 4 goals. It was the last time we saw 2 goals. It's been a while, right? Obviously, we also saw a lot of lineup changes, right? And so I want to start off with that, because we saw a lot of changes. First, we saw Tim Ream come in for Yariel Ronan, which was surprising, midweek, he dropped both Abada and Kerwin and mentioned Abada and Carroll, and Dean mentioned that he wanted to see a reaction from these guys. And I feel like he got that this weekend, right? But, you also saw Kerwin get dropped. Abada was playing from that left wing, right? So I'll start off with you, Vaughn. Talk to me about what you saw from this lineup that Dean decided to go with this weekend.
The big one was Privet getting to be back at the center back pairing and that forcing Ream wide. I think that change in and of itself allowed a lot of freedom for Byrne to get advanced and to take some risks, making end line runs, getting involved in the attack, and not having to rely so much on what was going to happen behind him. Also didn't hurt that they were playing a 16-year-old homegrown at left back on their side.
Yeah.
I said in the Mint City Slack and in my private chats with you, like, after the Orlando game, I was ready to go nuclear about Kerwin Vargas. Okay, like, Kerwin needed to come out of the starting lineup, and I think he has for a little while now. He has not been impactful in the way that he's needed to be. And this game we saw, Liel, like, our DP stepped up. Liel was involved. Biel had one of the best performances of anybody in a Charlotte FC shirt in the 3 years that we've existed.
Right.
Swiderski, I still think he was impactful even though he didn't score. Like, those guys showed a reaction. But I want to go in for a minute on Kerwin. Okay. I got my notes prepped on it. Yes, he's second on the team in goals, but his threat level when he's been out there has not been what it's needed to be.
Right.
And I think we've all seen that Yuri Tavares provides a different flavor and a different energy and a different level of impact. What really irked me in Orlando, and I saw it's not the first time. I mean, everybody lacked certain effort and energy, but Kerwin stood out significantly to me. He wasn't closing space. He wasn't making any runs. He wasn't making anything into the box. Like, Dean made the comment after the game in the press conference that we have too many guys that try to come to the ball. And it made me think, like, for Kerwin, does Kerwin try to go and get the ball? Like, does he approach the ball, or does he go and make runs? And I'm like, neither. like really, he doesn't. Like, he tries to find pockets of space and just kind of have the ball fall to him. And I wasn't seeing him defensively close space and prevent outlet balls. I felt he was slow to react. And this was not just like one game. This has been a recurring thing. But it really stood out watching it live from the vantage point that I was at. And so the comparisons for Vargas and Tavares over their last 10 league games, they each have 6 shots on goal. 6 shots on goal in 10 games. It's pretty rough.
Yeah.
But Vargas, like, his form and technique has been an issue for a long time on keeping the ball on frame, right?
Yep.
His XG from those 6 shots on goal over 10 games was 1.3 XG, right? And Tavares had a XG of, what was it, 2.8 in 265 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many starts is that, too?
Vargas had, in those 10 games, it was 804 minutes. God. 804 minutes, an XG of 1.3, and 6 shots on target.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I was talking to you about after the Orlando game is, like, part of our problem on offense right now is creating anything statistical volume-wise.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we might have a couple of chances in game, and we're like, hey, it was a close game, and we had our chances that we just didn't convert. Like, we've always this season been an opportunistic transitional team.
Right. Yep.
Right. And our chances are like, oh, we're getting 5 or 6 looks max in a game. I said that after the Orlando game where we had 4 shots on target. This or 4 shots total. Total.
Yeah.
Total.
Really bad.
And our response against New England was a record for the club. First time ever. Go look on FBref. First time we've ever crossed 20 shots in a game. Right? If you take 20 shots in a game, if half of them are ending up in the vicinity of the goal, and half of those end up being quality shots, all right, even if a keeper comes up with 1 or 2 good saves, you're going to end up with 2 or 3 goals.
Yep.
Right? But if we're only getting 5 or 6 shots on target across 3 games, how many goals do you think we're going to score? Yeah, so Kerwin, for me, was a big factor in that, is that plays go out wide to him to just die, right? When possession goes out wide left for us, he can't beat anybody in a 1v1 dribble. He's got 1 assist to his name all year, so he's not creating for others, and he's not ultimately putting enough shots on frame. So yeah, he's also like leading the team in shots, but they're all going skyward. So when possession gets out there and he does take a chance, it's not anything of threat.
Yeah.
And so I think a big factor that changed for us in this game was, yeah, he scored a goal. I'm not letting him off the hook for that. like, yeah, he was effective off the bench. And maybe that's the thing for Tavares. Like, maybe Tavares is more effective off the bench than he is as a starter. And I think we're going to get into that at some point about Agyemang. But, like, for me, the big difference of what happened in this game on the lineup, it was, yes, what changed on the back line, but then it was also what we did in the front three.
Love that. I mean, great analogy, great explanation. And just touching on that, like, Brian, obviously we saw him drop both Swiderski and Abada, but left Vargas in that match.
Yep.
What do you think his thinking was in that Orlando match? Is it, Kerwin, is a player that comes back and helps defensively? What about it you think made Dean Smith want to stick with him?
Well, I think that's what had been one of the things that Vargas had kind of become known for, was that he was a good two-way player, and he was developing into that. I mean, compared to a lot of the other guys that I've seen play on the wing in Charlotte's history, Vargas is really, he wasn't that when he first started, but had developed that into his game. For me, all of the attacking players and their energy wasn't at the level it needed to be. The press had been off since Biel and Swiderski had joined the lineup. It just seemed like everything was kind of just not in sync, and the press was never on, and teams were able to play through them way too easily. And so that's why I feel like a change had to be made. I was really intrigued by him setting such a strong message to Swiderski. He didn't let him come into the Orlando game until like the 83rd, 84th minute, really late. He let Tavares come in at center forward before him. It was for me a clear message as to, Carroll, you are not at the level you are supposed to be at. This is why we brought you back. We didn't send you back to Hellas Verona like we could have. All of these kind of things, right? So it seemed like it was a very strong statement message.
Yeah, I was surprised he started. I think
I was super surprised. Dean usually, when he makes a substitution or a change like that, it usually means he's got another plan in place. He's kind of been consistent like that all season. So I was really surprised he gave him the shot on Saturday. I think he did play decent. I think Bronico actually playing centrally and higher up really helped the energy level across the front. I think his work kind of goes a little bit under the radar in terms of just kind of how he produces energy and pressing when the other three, because I've noticed that from Abada and Biel since they come in, sometimes their energy will slack off of the ball a little bit. Bronico will not slack, and so it kind of helps the energy of the entire front of that press. I also liked that you mentioned Burn flying up the right. I feel like it did help pack the middle more as well, because then Biel came inside more. Bronico was already there. Swiderski was there. Just more numbers in and around central spaces. Charlotte, the other issue with during their winless streak was they constantly were outnumbered everywhere on the field. Whether they might have been in a transition moment against Montreal, and for some reason Montreal would be able to catch up with the numbers and defend the play. We just never really had advantages or numerical advantages at all. And so I think having that many numbers centrally helped create some more numerical advantages for them throughout the game.
Well, and it was also that we were playing front-footed.
Yeah.
Both sides of the ball.
Yep.
Right? Like we were pressuring better and we were getting forward, but also at times we were getting five in the front line in attack. Urso is somebody that we haven't talked a lot about because he started for us at the start of the year. Then he got injured. He wasn't factoring for a long time. Gianni really, took grasp of that role. But I think Urso and Bronico playing in that dual 8 role in this game in particular, that was another big factor. Like the whole team was getting advanced. The pressuring was there. Yeah. Urso had 2 chances that he could have had a brace another week. Yeah. Right? Like he had
a header in the first half.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think Urso was a factor in that, but it was all team defending. Yeah. Like we were making New England look sloppy because we were giving them limited time to pick their heads up, to give limited space to find the right pass, forcing them to have off-the-ball movement to even make those passes available. Yep. And so, we could stay compact, but, the ball never went wide. New England never had an opportunity to spread us out. And that was the exact opposite of what happened at Orlando. At Orlando, we were inviting the pressure. We were staying compact. We were giving them all the space out wide. And then when we finally closed to them out wide, we didn't have the guys behind the ball that were closing space and cutting out, so that it was just like they were passing through Swiss cheese. I mean, and that's really what it was. No midfield pressure, no duels being won, and we got caught out. And so that's the New England game. Just is what we need to see moving forward. We need to see our team play front-footed from whistle to whistle.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking a little bit about that, because it's a contrast in both teams, right? You have Orlando who's on the up, versus New England, who's part of it too is like they're imploding. I mean, like you saw Keelan Arriaga getting into it at the half.
Yep.
They got that a red card, right? That, I mean, obviously we had 20 plus shots on target, but I mean, they were also a man down, you know? So how much of this match in particular is Charlotte improving, and how much of this match is, you know, New England imploding? I'll start with you, Brian.
I think it's definitely a combination of both. I mean, you can't disregard the fact that New England teammates were fighting each other, right?
Yeah.
If that's happening in public, so there's always going to be disagreements in a business organization, a team, no matter where. People are going to disagree.
Yeah.
That's how a functioning team works. You want diversity of opinion and disagreement at times, but people can keep it behind closed doors and, you know, be like, and have a, you know, a good face when it comes to like just how they present themselves in public. Once you're arguing as teammates and you're showing the other team your hand, that you're in a completely emotional wreck, which is what they did. I mean, if Charlotte sees them fighting with themselves at half, you're like, we've got them.
Yeah.
Like, they're cooked. And so that's definitely like New England is clearly imploding. Like that's just where they're not respecting each other or themselves. That's what those actions lead to. And so there's definitely an advantage for Charlotte in that regard. Now you still have to take advantage of the opponent you're playing in front of.
Right.
You know, so you still got to get the job done, which is what they did. I will say that one concern I do have, in the first half, they were able to get the goal, go up into the half 1-0. And I do feel like the goal they scored, I mean, they had pressure on New England. It was like similar to like how Dean has talked about Charlotte. A lot of the Charlotte goals they've given up, a little bit of a soft goal, a rebound goal, a lot of bouncing around in the box. Abada, you know, it fell to him. He was able to put it away. I was concerned that the DPs weren't able to kind of find a lot of the finishing earlier, you know, because they took substitutions to kind of really. I mean, Agyemang came right in and got the second goal like almost immediately. One other thing I was concerned that I liked about what Agyemang did in that spot on that goal where he passed it to Biel. Abada had a moment 2 minutes earlier. It was in the like 59th, 60th minute. He had a 1v1 transition moment against Tim Parker. And instead of taking Tim Parker on and going straight into goal and taking kind of what would be a 50% chance of cooking Tim Parker, and then you have a 1v1 of the goalie, which is a way higher possibility chance, he opted to not attack Tim Parker, kind of went outside and just took a long-range shot from distance, which is a way lower possibility of success.
Yeah.
I want to see the DPs like that really take on the defenders, which is what Agyemang did. Give him 3 minutes later, he took on Tim Parker, cooked him to the byline, and had the pass into Biel. I do want to see more of that kind of attack. If it's the DPs, if it's Agyemang, whoever's out there, when you're in a 1v1 situation, a little bit more aggressiveness and just decisiveness in terms of just taking players on like that. I think we need to see a little bit more of that from the DPs.
Staying on just the topic of, you know, New England Revolution as well, I also feel like they could have felt hard done by that first half as well.
Yep.
Obviously, you know, I don't even know what you could call a handball these days anymore, but if that handball from Privet would have been called, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could be talking about a different game as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's an opportunity their striker as well had in that first half, right, that, you know, Kalina had a good save on. So I think also some of these factors that we needed to go our way went our way this time.
See, but I think we created our own luck in how we were playing, how we were set up, and how we were aggressive, right? Like, I think our team came out structured well to attack New England, structured well to have the numerical advantages. The game plan was set up well to limit those spaces. Like, why was Heel so mad at Arriaga? What did Arriaga do? There were multiple instances where Arriaga had a ball and he passed it directly out of bounds in that first half. Arriaga picked up a yellow in that first half. Both Arriaga and Tim Parker had yellows by the time that Agyemang came on, and I'll get to that in a second. Then Arriaga was the leading cause of the goal, right? Us scoring off of a rebound. Think back through the whole Rolodex of goals that we've scored in 3 years and count the number of times we have scored off of a rebound and off of a second ball in the box. I don't know if we can literally get to a handful of 5. Like, it's not how our team has ever been structured, us getting numbers in the box and being opportunistic, box in the box, put away a rebound, bounce on a save ball off of a keeper. It just doesn't happen for us. Like, that was something that was very exciting for me in this game. But Arriaga, he had a simple little toe poke into space that Abada was able to run onto, right? Like, we forced them to make an error in the box. And it started with Abada getting a shot in the first place. Abada took that chance that ultimately made it so something had to happen in the box. The ball's loose in there. Biel gets involved in it. And then ultimately it cycles back around to Abada getting the chance, right? But like, we created all of that, and we caused that frustration for them, I think, through our play. And Agyemang, like, this is the difference between why did he start against Orlando and then why is he coming off the bench, and which is he more effective as, right? I think a big reason that he got selected to start against Orlando was because he was going up against Robin Janssen, right? It was a big physical center back, and it was saying, hey, first of all, I want to send a message to Swiderski, but I also want to challenge Janssen, and our attack being largely one-dimensional when Agyemang's out there of play the ball forward to him, let him use his physicality, let him open up space. Well, he was able to do the same thing in this game coming off of the bench, and he's going up against two center backs that are tiring, that have been running around, that have been having to play back-footed, and that are both sitting on yellows. And so, yeah, he was able to pull Tim Parker way out of position. Tim Parker is covering Agyemang all the way to the corner of the 18-yard box, and then once Agyemang gets that strong touch around him, but Tim Parker, he's because of what's happened earlier in the game, he can't reach out and slow him down. He can't impede his progress. He can't block it. He has to let him go, right? But
he patted him on the back.
But like, Agyemang, that opportunity is created for Agyemang. I don't think that happens in the first half. Right? Like, I just don't think that opportunity opens up the same way in the first half. And we've seen it. It didn't against Orlando. Agyemang, yeah, he's got these 8 goals, but it's mercurial. There's times where we say, man, he really needs to have that rest, and he needs to get that opportunity. And, hey, we're one-dimensional. Why is it all just this long ball over the top to Agyemang? And he's either bullying a guy and successful at it, or his touch is sloppy on the day, right? It's one or the other. And so I think the way that it's shaking out is like, okay, Swiderski, you've got to step up. You've got to be impactful, or Pat's going to get those minutes. Pat, you need to be ready to come on off the bench, and hopefully the other guys, you need to do the work before Pat comes on. Tire those guys out, make those center backs work, make those center backs pick up yellows, make it difficult, and put the other team under some duress. Yeah. And I think that's what we were successful at doing against New England. And I really think it was more about what we did and how we responded after Orlando more than anything about New England. Because New England, they were playing with their backs up against the wall. They're trying to claw back in and fight their way into that play-in game, right? Like, that's what Montreal did. Montreal is playing with their backs up against the wall, and they rose to the occasion at home. Yeah. New England, on the other hand, they came out flat, but I think a lot of that was because of what we did, both stylistically, game plan-wise, and our guys responding to what should have been a chewing out in the locker room.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a bit like us last year where we were chasing too, versus this year we're trying to solidify that spot. And, like, obviously you're talking about, Patrick Agyemang, and I kind of want to go with both of y'all on what Pep Biel is able to provide to our strikers in that chance creation. We've talked about volume, right? I mean, obviously in Pat's goal, you saw the ball that he put into space for Patrick. I think that was the third goal of the match, right? And so what did you, Brian, I'll go with you. What specifically did you see about Pep Biel in this match? You touched on it a little bit, but go more into him specifically.
Well, I mean, obviously movement both inside and outside. He can is multi-dimensional, just in terms of he's, just able to help provide attack from multiple different spots. I don't think we have a lot of guys who are capable of doing that right now. Like, a lot of our attackers are kind of either, you mentioned Patrick Agyemang's very forward-thinking. Kirill Swiderski kind of always drops back. And then you have Kerwin Vargas and Abada are kind of both just, very, one-dimensional on either of the wings. And so I think what Biel provides is kind of just an ability to go inside, outside, kind of move all over the place, and also created a bunch of looks. 6 chances created. I mean, it's just something that we haven't seen from an attacking-minded player really at all in Charlotte FC history. This doesn't happen enough. Most of our attacking chance creation has come from either Ashley Westwood, who's the sixth, or Uranen, who's the left back. So to have an attacking midfielder playing an attacking role and create that many chances in a game is a huge change. And so I think that's really what it comes down to for me, more than whether he gets, the goal contributions obviously are pivotal for a player like him, a player for any of these DPs at this point. Because, I think Swiderski's playing for a job as well. Biel's playing for a job, right? He's got 4 games left. So a lot of these guys are playing for a job. And I think the stat for Biel is how many, chances can he create per 90?
Yeah, I
think that's really what it comes down to.
Let's dive deep into that a little bit, because after the press conference or after the match, Pep Biel came out, and I wanted to know straight up, hey, do you feel like you want to be here next year? Like, what's your goal? And you could tell, like, the guy wants to be here, right? And obviously, you could take this match and say, like, this is our guy, right? But, like, if you're looking at things objectively, and I'll ask you, Vaughn, what does Pep Biel need to do to convince you that he is a caliber 10 that can take us to that next level, or that we've been missing? Obviously we saw it in this match where you mentioned 6 chance creations, but what do you need to see from Pep Biel to convince you this is our 10?
He needs to be a game-changing player in whatever role he's asked to play, right? Like, part of the challenge for him at the 10 is he has not been finding those through balls, right? And he's not a playmaking, chance-creating, Carlos Heel style, gonna hit 20 assists in a season type of midfielder, right? Like he's been a goal-scoring threat, high energy, everything progressive kind of player, right? And where he's been impactful, and the switch is he's playing right wing, right? He's not playing as the number 10. He's being asked to go play wide, and this, we've changed how he's being utilized. So right now, what I need to see him do is, find ways to impact the game. And that's what he did against New England. He found ways to be threatening. He found ways to be able to get into dangerous positions, to make that run in the box, to make himself available, get his opening goal, right? Get on the score sheet. It's taken until this game. He got two contributions to the score sheet. This is the first time we've seen it. We need to see consistency in that. I need to see him, like, there is a certain level of acclimation, but the concerns for him is, can he be that talisman guy on the team? Can he step in and be every single game looks like the best player on the pitch contributor, whether it's at the number 10 or it's out wide playing on the wing?
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Well, the issue is he's got 4 games to prove it. There's not enough. There won't be enough of a case study or sample size for us to actually know that. And so that becomes difficult to kind of gauge, right?
And we talked about that, right? When the sign, because Zora made it sound like it was a low risk signing, but it's also like a low reward signing in the terms of like having a 9-game window to try to make a decision, not a whole lot of time to really make the right call, And so to make it actually give him a chance at making it the right call, the only way to do that is having 4 impactful games in a row.
Yes and no. It's also maybe more of a ramp than you'd get otherwise.
Yeah.
Right? Like, otherwise you're signing a guy permanently without any trial. Right? Right? Like, you're just bringing him in and saying, hit the ground running, and we've made a commitment to you, and like we're gonna sink or swim with what happened here.
Yeah, but when you look at if you look at the summer window, you look at Calvin Stings, you expect him to be a top performer in MLS. You look at Miguel Almiron, he already has a track record, right? So I think it's more of like, if they don't sign Pep, that's what they have to go back.
But there's no guarantee either, right? Like Almiron stepping in, on paper, yes, he's going to be that impact guy, but you don't know that he's going to hit the ground running. He's also coming in off of a preseason, right? Like you're asking him to immediately step in and be that game changer. Stings, we knew clearly Stings needed to go under the knife, right? And he was not. I think the team made that decision is like, hey, we might be willing to bring you in still because you are talented and skillful and are going to help us in the long run. Yeah. But our window right now that we feel is open you're not going to be able to impact it because you're going to immediately be going under the knife, and you're not going to be part of this end of season stretch, and you're not going to be part of the playoff run.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the decision for Biel is, no, we need to bring somebody in who can fill that role, fill that area of need, make that addition that might help us get over the top. And both with him and Patterson, it was getting an insurance policy to that.
Yeah.
Covering for the loss of Diagra and Arfield, and at this point, Bender as well. Right, we need to cover those minutes, but we need to have somebody that can step in and be impactful.
Yeah.
All right, it took him a couple games with the entire team out of form, mind you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, as long as I'm seeing them figure it out, and that's the thing, like, part of me is like, guys, we're where we were going to be this whole time all along. Right? Like, when I was on what was it, episode
2 or 3? Yeah.
Yeah, we were 2 games into the year. It was after the Vancouver game.
Yeah.
And I said our ceiling is 3rd or 4th in the conference.
Yeah.
We're still right there. Our ceiling is still probably at this point 4th in the
I don't think
conference.
3rd is quite possible anymore.
Right, but like we've always been in that next tier.
Yeah.
And you guys know I've been banging the drum on socials of being like, this team should be considered a cup contender because of our defense. Right, the concern over this stretch for me has not been the attack. Yes, I know we've hit this stretch of like, whoa, we've gone 6 games without scoring from the run of play. There's been 600 plus minutes without a goal. Like, this isn't good.
Yeah.
We're taking steps backwards. But I'm like, a lot of that is chemistry driven.
Yeah.
Right. But like defense, we need to be able to earn those clean sheets. We need to be able to hold teams to 0 or 1 goal, and we need to be able to get to the final whistle either ahead or in a draw position. Like, that's how we're going to be successful in the playoffs. So we just need to, over these next 4 games, build that form, build that confidence, build that trust in one another. And I still think sky's the limit.
Yeah. I mean, just staying on the Pep Biel, we're like, I know you mentioned, like, you can have players and you don't really know what. Like, obviously, Almiron or Stings could have came in and Dave could have been poor too. But I also think it's the ceiling that these players could provide. You felt that they can make more of an impact now versus Pep Biel. I don't know what Pep Biel's ceiling would be in MLS.
Yeah, they're more of a known commodity.
Yeah.
Well, and it's 2 different situations, right? Like, they opted, the window, the strategy was see who from the higher leagues will fall to MLS and then try to make that jump at the end of the window.
Yeah.
That the chances they took didn't pan out, and Biel was the stopgap, right? So we're talking about 2 different...
Well, imagine if it was Lo Celso.
Yeah.
It could have been Lo Celso that we would have added. And Lo Celso at that time, like, he's not getting minutes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that we could have relied on him to play even 70 minutes game in and game out.
Yeah.
I think the what I'm trying to get at is if we, like, say, all right, 4 games, make playoffs, say we play Cincy, we get eliminated, like, I feel like we'll be in the same boat where, like, okay, like, Pep could be the guy, but is there a better option out? And we're kind of still in that same mindset from the summer window. And I don't think we'll see enough to know whether Pep is truly the player that we need to sign or not.
But that can also be dictated by whether or not we find and can come to terms with somebody in the window.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we got also that time until January 1 where, like, we don't have to commit to Pep Biel on decision day, like, or the day we get eliminated from the playoffs.
Point, yeah.
Right? Like, there's still time to make that decision.
Yeah.
There's going to be other dominoes that fall.
Yeah.
We're assuming that the roster's going to have changeover.
Yeah.
MLS rosters always have changeover. Right? Like, right now, Abada's being effective on the more so on the left in this one game than he's been on the right.
Yeah.
Right? He went, 5 games? Or I think he had 3 games in a row where he didn't have a shot on target.
Yeah.
So, same thing. Right? Is Abada happy? Is Abada part of the long-term plans? Right? Is he the guy for that position?
That would be wild to let him go to the next window, though.
Swiderski, right?
That's more of a name where you're like,
think-
okay,
yeah,
I don't know if he'll be here.
But the point being is Zoran is saying, he says we should be competing for a supporter shield next year. We know, looking at the roster, that there is work to be done to get to that.
Oh, yeah.
We need to have a guy of Stang's level to be able to say with confidence that we are in that tier.
Yeah. Well, because when you look at
Yeah.
all our DPs, right, like, it's kind of the same issue with all of them where, like, there are moments where they look like DPs, but there's nobody that I can say, okay, like, this guy's really long-term and really be a talisman of this team.
The thing is, we have complementary DPs now for the first time ever. Like, the number of games we've played with 3 DPs on the pitch, that all of them have been starting, and that they are complementary pieces to one another is like also handful of games, right? Like we are in the blossoming moments of Abada, Swiderski, and Biel playing together, right? And like they're having to gel, they're having to vibe.
Yeah.
Like I see the signs, and they're gonna understand. And what we heard from Dean, right? Dean said, we've got too many guys that want to approach the ball. They want to go to the ball. Abada is not that kind of player. Abada has always been a goal-scoring winger that wants to get in behind, that wants to make runs. He hasn't had a midfielder that can make a through-line pass to justify that run. He never makes that run, right? He's going to get opportunities to do that now. But is it on the left? Is it on the right? We don't know that. Is Biel going to be able to find that ball out of midfield, or is he going to need to be deployed out wide? Swiderski, is he going to continue to be a guy that drops in, or is he going to need to be the bench guy that comes on after Agyemang has already been the one that's stretching the other team? Like, there's a lot of moving pieces here, but I see the pieces as complementary to one another. We have weapons. It just hasn't quite clicked. But and we were talking about this before we jumped on. Like, the whole league, this Leagues Cup, and the mojo and the fluidity of attack, there's not a lot of teams that have it right now. Like, we just have looked particularly bad and, like, particularly disturbed in that fluidity until this New England game.
I'm still hesitant on, even with 5-6 matches with all of them on, like, will we actually see that fluidity? Because I think it's going to go back to that issue where, like, no one has actually proven that there are, like, a consistent DP week in and week out.
Well, you mentioned several questions. I think some of those questions could easily be answered, but it is a lot of questions of how things work best. And they only have 4 games to answer those questions before playoffs. So, but then I think you guys both kind of touched on 2 different aspects of the window. I think Vaughn, what you were talking about is kind of like they brought in pieces that kind of, like you say, complementary, have provide a lot of different things. Maybe they'll fit, maybe they won't. We'll kind of have to see. They're gonna have flexibility if they don't fit. I think Jorge, what you were kind of talking about was like, and I think I've had this concern as well a little bit, is just I don't feel like I've seen enough decisiveness from the front office in terms of like really committing to a plan early enough and really like nailing it down and really running with it. And I think that's what for me was the issue with the
expand on that. Like, well,
so like whether it's signing the player early enough in the window to actually like really like allow them the time to make the difference that they need to be made, or like getting their plan A pick in. Those are the two things that we haven't seen from a summer window in club history. They've always kind of waited till August, see what kind of happens, and then kind of attack late. It's a fine strategy usually. It can be, and I'd say it has been effective at times in the past. But I think what was missing for me this year was this seemed like a really a good opportunity for them to be decisive a little bit earlier and really attack some plan A options.
Yeah.
I think there were some players available, and some other teams made those moves. And, obviously some teams are at different tiers. LA Galaxy, I think, are a step or 2 above where Charlotte FCs are at right now. So them being able to get Marco Royce in, as their plan A player was, obviously, and we could talk about Charlotte FC having like the discovery rights and all that, but it doesn't really matter. Like they never really going to have a chance with them. But then, or St. Louis getting Marcel Hartel in early. So some of these players just got in like their plan A. Clearly was their plan A option, and Dean Smith even said like he felt supported and that they were being ambitious. And I think Charlotte FC didn't really match their ambition was above maybe the level of what they could recruit, right?
Yeah.
They had Marco Royce on the discovery rights. Seems pretty clear that he was never planning on coming to Charlotte. So they should have just never bothered, right? That's just inefficient, waste of time.
Yeah.
Same with a lot of the moves they were making. Calvin Stanks from Feyenoord, if there wasn't an issue with his injury, he would have gone to France, Italy, Spain, right? His step up was not to MLS, right? So these are players that, unless there's a big red flag or a question mark, the moves they were trying to make were long shots and maybe a tier or 2 above. Miguel Almiron, yes, maybe he's 30, maybe he's experienced in MLS, but the guy clearly still wants to play at a high level, right? That's just kind of been the expression across the board. So while it's, from one perspective, you can say, yes, it's ambition, but like anybody can say they want to be ambitious and say they want to throw names out there and try to make the call and do those things. And it's another thing to be like, hey, we're Charlotte. This is the level of what we can do. How do we maximize what we can participate in and get somebody to buy in? And I think they just need to do that a little bit earlier than like the last couple of days of the window.
I don't know. I'm going to push back on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And the reason being is, first of all, I think we've been fairly PR-wise outward about who we're pursuing. Like, it has gotten out a lot of the targets and who we're pursuing and what those numbers are.
Yeah.
I think it's fairly clear that we had the highest and best offer to Marco Reus, to Albert Grunbeck, to Miguel Almiron, to Calvin Stangs, to Lo Celso.
Yeah.
We had the highest dollar figure on the table to all of those players.
Yeah.
Like, ambition, like, we are playing a ball game where we're trying to spend money that other MLS teams do not spend. I've talked about this before, comparing, like, Sporting Kansas City and other markets. Now, the difference is if we're doing an overspend, which we've dug in and we've talked privately about at times, is like, okay, we spent $6 million on Copetti, but what did we get for Copetti, right? And you compare that to, like, Atlanta and them spending $3 million on Yakumakis, or St. Louis spending that kind of money on João Klaus, and, like, do they end up with a better DP than we ended up with, right? Of, like, you didn't get your first target, or you did finally get your first target, but you overspent for that first target. Oh, but now you're settling on your third target. I think we oversimplify what it takes to sign somebody and bring them in, right? And I think we've.
But there's a trajectory now of multiple signings now going well.
But I think what we've seen, and this is what we said going into this year, was like, I wanted to see market progress. I think that every time, every window that hits, we are trying to make signings that, on paper, improve our position, strengthen positions, address areas of need. Like, we're consistently adding a guy on every single line. And going into this window, right, we improved adding Ream, Biel, Toklamati. Like, the additions have been things that were good, progressive moves for the club. They maybe weren't hitting to the level of us trying to get Stangs, but, like, we still brought somebody in and addressed the area of need. And so that's what I trust, is, like, there's going to still be that effort, and it's eventually going to hit. I think we are still, guys, I'm talking about us being a cup contender in the middle of the conversation. Like, we don't have that talisman, but we're getting closer.
Yeah. Oh, I think, I didn't say that I wasn't, the club was showing ambition. That wasn't, my point was that the ambition they were showing, like saying they're like talking to big names, and the big names they're showing, and the big money offers they're presenting, that's all well and good. But clearly it wasn't realistic, right? Because the big money figures weren't hitting. And so that's more my concern.
And even if
was that they were like making...
Stangs was realistic, though.
Even if it was realistic for some reason or not, like, if you can't get these guys over the line, that's where, like, it doesn't matter to me that you go make a offer. Like, at the end of the day, they have to sign. We have to see the players here. I get the improvement part, but I still don't see, like, we still don't. It's been 3 years and we have no talisman in this team.
Yeah.
There's nobody that I can see in this squad. This guy can take us to that next level. And part of that is, like, I kind of agree with you on that transfer strategy where, you know, like, we benefited off of, you know, Abada needing to leave Celtic. And that's the type of ambitious moves that I kind of see the club make. What is going on internally between a player and a club that could kind of have that window open versus, hey, we're going to be very aggressive in trying to sign this player? That's more of what I see. If we do like a case study of these players, one by one, I feel like we could figure that out.
Well, I think it's stylistically too, right? Like, I think we have played largely pragmatically, right? Like Dean is still turning over this roster to agree to fit what he wants to be able to do, right? And so he recognizes that the team is still needing or he's missing a few of those flavors that he wants to have at his disposal to be the team he wants to become, right? Like, it's going to be a project. It's not a finished thing yet. And so, all right, we got Abada. Abada's an $8 million signing. Is he an $8 million winger? We haven't seen that yet, but he's also 22 years old. By the time he's 24, 25, and he's been here, maybe he is that talisman.
Yeah, but he's an $8 million winger coming in.
Yeah, but if next year, if he's scoring 10 goals for us, he might be there, right? If the system and style changes, like right now, if we just play more aggressively, like we were talking about playing front-footed, if this team is just playing on the front foot and pressuring better, he might be that level right now. Like it's just literally the tactics and the style and us needing to change some of those dials a little bit. I think we can still make that happen.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We can go back and forth on this for a minute.
Yeah.
Let's touch on a little bit about, and actually, I think the way you explained it was great about Patrick Agyemang and what he can bring. But let's talk about the striker position. I'll go over with you. Obviously, like the style of striker that Swiderski is versus Pat is different, right?
Yeah.
If I'm Dean Smith, am I looking at this from a game to game, or am I looking at it like I need to start Swiderski and have Pat come off the bench, or I need to start Pat and have Swiderski come off the bench?
I favor just I mentioned decisiveness just now when we were talking about transfer window, so I think it would be hypocritical of me to not then just roll with that kind of decision making in this segment as well. I think Dean Smith needs to make a decisive decision, and for me, I think it's clearly Patrick Agyemang. Like, I don't see what Carroll is providing to what Dean is trying to do in terms of forward play, where he fits and is getting the job done. Like, he has it, and Patrick Agyemang is in his first 2,000 minutes at the first tier level, and he's already matching Karol Swiderski's first season in goal contributions. Like, he's right there. So, like, he's going to have off days. He's going to have some bad touches. All these things are true, but what he does well is he's extremely aggressive. He takes 50% of his dribbles and attacks, towards the center backs are successful. Right, he wins a lot of his dribbles. He wins a lot of those aerial duels. What happens is he's in the final third. People focus in on that, key in on those moments, right? More so than the other moments. They see the mistakes he makes, and they zoom in on him because he's going to make mistakes. He's 23. Let the kid play. This 30-minute showing, I don't know how it could not convince people otherwise. He scored. Yeah. He cooked Tim Parker, which he's already cooked Glesnes this year. He's put so many center backs on the back foot and beaten them. It's just, for me, if you're a center back as well, and you're asking, I would love to start asking some center backs of opponents, just like who they would prefer to play, especially if they've played against both of them, who they would prefer to defend against. Because the way Carroll drops in, you don't have to defend him 1v1. He drops in deeper. He tries to provide and do the things from deeper in. He also takes a lot more shots outside of the box. Everything Agyemang does is inside the box and around the box, which is also how Dean wants to play. He mentioned that when Capetti was the starter at the beginning of the year, he wanted Capetti to get touches in the box. That's what he wasn't doing, and now Capetti's gone. So for me, I think Agyemang just fits what Dean Smith is trying to do. I get that there's times when play is launched long. I don't know if that's necessarily on one player if he's willing to make the runs in behind. You have 10 other guys in the player, in play that are trying to, you can be involved in creating those moments to help launch them in behind or build up play. Like, I don't necessarily think that all has to be on Agyemang, but then at the same time, he also helped in the build up play this time. I don't see the value of, I don't see Swiderski as the long-term play.
Gotcha.
I just don't see how he is going to be the long-term play in this team, and so just move on with the guy that you have.
The only thing I would push back on what you're saying would be the context of when he came in. Vaughn went on this on how he came in. 10 men, like New England are down a man.
Fair.
Players on yellows, right? Like this guy is ready to rip it, right? Okay. And he did, which is fair.
If our tactic is to press high, and to try and be front-footed, I want Swiderski to be that guy leading the line for the start of the game, because we saw what happened when we sat back. Like Agyemang against Orlando was not effective. Like he was pocketing.
Yeah, but the whole team was not effective.
Yeah, but I'm saying
I wouldn't say.
But part of that was also the structure, right? We sat back defensively. If we're trying to press the ball, it is not Agyemang's strength. If we're trying to play that type of game, right? If he's the outlet, right? Or if he's going up against tired legs, he's a totally different effective player. Yeah. So I see him as a weapon. Like to me, I just think he's more effective and he's more dangerous to opponents when he's coming on for a 30 to 40 minute cameo.
Tell that to Philadelphia on the road when he's beat him for a brace 2-0. I'm just saying, Agyemang, to me, has easily proven it, and there's just nothing left. I mean, I just don't understand. There's nothing left for me to. I don't even think. I think Agyemang's the better presser than Swiderski. I don't even think these guys are pressing that well. Like Biel and Abada, and their energy has not been
until this game.
This game was decent, but they also did a lot of mid-block. They didn't do a lot of pressing. Like, they didn't do a ton. Like, it wasn't like they were pressing full on, like, the whole time. So, I don't think I see, like, Agyemang being that much of a drop-off in press either. Because Swiderski has never, that, like, athleticism and, like, high energy has never been his game. Like, that's just not his game. And so, I don't know if, like,
no, I think that is exactly Swiderski's game. Swiderski's game is covering ground. It's being absolutely everywhere.
Okay.
Right? Like as a 9, right? It's being willing to drop in. He's not good at making the runs.
I'm talking about off the ball, like on defensively. Like that's not. I just don't see that. Like, he's not that high energy. He hasn't been.
No, I think he does cover the ground personally. Swiderski being that guy that presses, shepherds play. Forces he'll make that run at a goalkeeper and force the goalkeeper to have to make a decision to kick it long, kick it out, to do something with the ball. Swiderski's going to make that extra little run at the guy to force a pass that Agyemang he doesn't do consistently.
Okay. I love it. I love this. This is a really good episode.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of time, we're going to move on to the next topic, and that's Inter Miami, right? Obviously, we're heading into a match against the best team, one of the best teams in MLS. Large portions of this season, right? They haven't even had Messi, and they found ways to win, right? And obviously, we're headed to Miami, right? And out of this 4-game stretch, this is the most difficult match, right? So what are you guys expecting from this match? And I'll start off just talking about a little bit about, like, I just want to see the same energy. Regardless of the result this weekend, this isn't the match I'm concerned with. I'm concerned with the last 3, right?
Yeah.
But heading into that, we need consistency, right? Like that Leagues Cup break just killed a lot of teams, not only us, but moving into this match, whether it's Swiderski, whether it's Patrick Agyemang starting at the 9, right? I need to see the same type of reaction we saw here in Charlotte, in Miami. Now, if it goes 2-0, 2-1, 3-0, whatever it is, right? Whether we win, draw, or lose, yeah. Like, I need to see that same energy, and that's what I'm expecting going into this match. I guess I'll start off with you, Vaughn. What are you expecting seeing Charlotte going into this match?
The big other thing that we talked about after the Orlando game that changed the New England game that I want to see carry over for the Miami is play with intention. That's both, yes, the pressing and how you're shepherding play, but it's also literally the passing of the ball and our rotations. When we played Orlando, we were sloppy. We would often clear lines, and when we were in attack and getting into the final third, it's been one of our challenges all year, is finding those passes and knowing where the ball is going next. And against Miami, we're going to have opportunities where they're going to get advanced, and we're going to have opportunities in transition, right? And that is our calling card. Like, my scare is that we're going to play that hyper compact role, but what we've done very well is we tend to, as a team over the past 3 years, rise to the occasion when we have teams that have very good players. We've seen it against Miami, right? Of like, hey, how do we lock down the guy? Now, Messi's a whole nother animal, and they've also got Busquets. They've also got Suarez. They've also got Alba. They've got weapons galore all over the place. Miami is just so much. So for me, it's how are we locking in mentally, right? Like, to me, it's a matter of, yes, we're compact, but are we making those mental lapses, mental errors, and playing desperate? We can't play desperate. We have to be playing with confidence, play with conviction, play with purpose and intention in every phase of the game.
Right.
If we do that, we stand a chance. And it's going to be that proving point, what I've said of, are we a cup contender or not? Can we hold them to 1 or 0 goals? Can we keep it close? And can we maybe nab one on them? That's all I want to see from this Miami game is, can we be competitive against a team of their level?
Okay, awesome. Brian, talk to me a little bit about when you're playing a team like Miami that, obviously Supporter Shield contender, right?
Yeah.
Gonna most likely
pre-locked.
Yeah, they got it, right?
Yeah.
Is it almost a benefit that we go in there with like the expectation of like, let's just have a good game?
I could see that. I mean, I also think Miami has started to slack a little bit in terms of form. I mean, they're doing a little bit of rotation, but I mean, they're coming off of 2 draws, which if you look at their form before that was like 1 loss and like 8 or 9 wins out of their previous 10. Like they were just in unreal form. A lot of that without Messi. I think for how many great signings they have, Tata Martino has actually done I think he's kind of slid under the radar as how well he's coached this team and managed them throughout all the different competitions that they are in, and managing having no Messi. I think a lot of coaches, after having Messi brought in,
and a lot of injuries on the back line.
Yeah, all over the place. And so I think he's Tata could easily be, and it should be in the conversation for Coach of the Year because of just how well he's managed this whole group. Granted, they obviously are all, most of them are world-class players, but still, I think he's done a great job. I think having the pressure off a little bit in this game, I mean, I think I could see it helping a little bit, but at the same time, it's still Miami in Miami where they have been extremely good. I don't think they've been shut out at home at all this year. Might have been against Orlando. It's been a long time since they've been shut out at all. I think it's been since May. I was looking it up, and I think it was May was the last time they were even shut out at all. So keeping it down to 0-1 is going to be extremely difficult. I mean, but I think that's absolutely what it comes down to. You do not want to get in a shootout with this team. Charlotte does not have the firepower. So if you're getting into 2, 3, 4 goal setup, they're going to be in trouble because they can put up 3 or 4.5. So I think finding a way to keep the game manageable is going to be the key, of course. But I do also at the same time, I think 2 is kind of that number. Can they get to 2 goals? Because I think it's going to require 2 to even get a point, just because keeping Miami to 0-1 is a very, very tall order. I think it's very difficult, if not close to impossible, for them to do at home. If they do, I mean, then you're talking about, one of the better defensive performances probably by Charlotte FC this season. But then 2, I think for me, if they can find a way to get 2 transition moments, 2 good, opportunities where they can put them away, that's probably what it's going to require. I think a 2-2 result would be the most ideal setup for Charlotte FC in this one. Obviously, any draw, but I think 2-2 might be what is required.
And film study is going to be important on this one because NYCFC just gave really good tape on how to minimize the threats of Miami. So I think that's the other thing that's maybe playing in our favor a little bit is we should be able to come up with a game plan. And that's what I'm excited for, Dean, is show a game plan that can be competitive and find a way to get a result against them.
Nice. And then just looking at it right now, obviously, we're 3 points away from that 4th with, we're right in that mix, right? And you've got some favorable matches coming, Chicago at home, Montreal at home, then we go to DC away as well, right? Ideally for me, looking at the schedule, if we can finish maybe 5th and try to play a New York team, that to me, 1, it's realistic, and 2, I would want to avoid Columbus and Cincinnati in that first playoff round, right? And so in terms of what we have left for the season, right? 1, I like that, we got a win that we needed to get against New England Revolution, right? But 2, 3 out of these next 4 games, if we get 2 wins, and I think even Andrew Privet mentioned it as well, that's probably a target that they have. Hey, let's get 2 more wins. Let's solidify 5th. If we can get 4th, that would be great, right? But let's try and compete with a New York team, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before the episode that, I actually think we match up pretty well against Cincinnati and Columbus. I mean, we won the season series against both of those teams, and those were a home and away series. I was just talking a second ago about how we tend to rise to the occasion and find ways to limit the threat of the star players. Now, playoffs are a different animal, and different things happen. Like, you're not going to shut down Cucho for 2 games. You're not going to shut down Lucho Acosta for 2 games. I get that. But Red Bulls, for me, even with their form, they've been rough, but they've had our number. I want to avoid them. NYCFC, Martinez is a dangerous guy.
Yeah.
He's been playing well. So even with their shaky performances, he's somebody that scares me. Orlando, we just saw what happened against Orlando. Yeah. Like, I think it's pretty clear that they have some strategies that we don't match up super well against them. And so, ultimately, that it doesn't so much matter. It's get into the playoffs. Seeding number doesn't matter. 4th, it'd be great, but that home field advantage, it's a minimal advantage, frankly. Like, if that's only in effect if you get to that 3rd game.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're taking care of business in the first 2. And so matchups, like, they're all tough opponents. They're all playoff teams. We need to be able to go in there with confidence. We've got to build that confidence up, build that fluidity in attack up over that final stretch, go in with some momentum. We said it even in preseason, right? Like, I hope we hit 50 points. That's us winning 3 of our next 4. Yeah. That's going to be a tall task.
Yeah.
We were saying before we jumped on, like, we've got 3 of those 4 games in an 8-day stretch. Like, 12 days from right now, or when people are listening to this, it's probably 11 days from right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we are already to that final game of the season.
Yeah.
So, like, we're going to know how things are shaking out here very, very soon. I just hope that we get into some of that good vibes, good confidence, good energy in this final stretch so that we can hit with some momentum going into the playoffs.
Perfect. Yeah. So for me, it's, hey, finish in 5th and try to play a New York team. For you, it's pretty much don't go below 7, right? Finish 7th and
get some confidence and don't face Red Bulls.
Yeah. And then what is it for you, Brian?
For me, I mean, I don't want to play one of the top 3 teams. I think for me, it's just, even if our history has been good against them, I am concerned about there's a playoff situation. I'm concerned also about those coaches. Tata Martino, we just talked about. Wilfred Nancy and Pat Noonan, for me, are the top 3 coaches in the Eastern Conference, and that's, I think, one of the big reasons why they're all, in the top of the Eastern Conference right now. And they've all been there before, and they've all done it before in various. I mean, Pat Noonan hasn't gotten them all the way to a final yet, but I mean, he's won playoff games, and he's just done it. And I think a lot of these
all 3 of those teams have like players that can.
Yeah, they just have they have a clear talisman that has also shown up and been there and done it before, right? So I think those situations and those moments are scary for me. I think if they can do everything to push for 4th, I favor a home field. I think having the option for 2 home games is a good point.
Yeah. Because we also haven't seen, and sorry to interrupt you, is Charlotte FC in a playoff atmosphere, right? I mean, we kind of saw it with the Miami game, right? But that's kind of circumstantial. And we saw it a little bit, I would like to say, that first season when we were chasing that 7th spot.
Yeah.
And, we just came short because we drew that game 2-2. So that's the factor that none of us can really, like, know if players can rise to the occasion, like you mentioned. Like, I think on any day, if under the right circumstances, like, we can beat anybody.
Well, and I think this is the other thing too, is I think more than anything, I think that the Chicago and the Montreal games that are coming up at home
games
are almost more important than the playoff game for the fan base.
Yeah.
Like part of the So part of the vibes and where I think we've been a pretty downtrodden fan base is that until this win on Saturday, we have not had a home win in 14 weeks, right? Like, between Leagues Cup happening, the rough form, Now, unless you count the Cruz Azul Leagues Cup, but that was a 0-0 game, win on PKs. Like, we all know that was a weird energy.
Yeah.
So, like, a regular season, go out, get the win at home.
Yep.
It has been 14 weeks.
Mm.
It's been a long stretch of the fan base feeling that belief, that energy, that rush and excitement for, whoa, we scored goals, and having the fireworks go off. And
leaving the stadium and cheering.
And leaving the stadium with that vibe.
That's a good point.
And so to me, these games against Chicago and Montreal are going to be that, yes, it's building that form, it's building that confidence, it's building that belief among the fan base. Like to me, the long term, like, people will buy in if we finish strong and we end up in that 4th or 5th position. Like, what's important about that is we're all going to be able to come back around the table here and be like, we progressed and we made progress under Dean, and the team looks more dangerous. And hey, look at what we can do in the offseason to change and really take that next step. Yeah. And the result in the playoffs almost doesn't matter. Like, people are going to say, we should be winning championships and we should be going out there and don't get, win a playoff round. Like, that's my hope, is like an advance in the playoffs. That's the mark of the progress.
Yeah. But
like, I think it's very, 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 very important what happens, and having that playoff atmosphere, Chicago and Montreal.
Yeah. Especially, I would say, especially the last home match, right? And because you're right, like, even like from a perspective of like newer fans or people, like, I had 2 new people that I knew that came for their very first game, and they're like, dude, this is addicting. And, well, you came to a 4-0 win versus a 0-0, right? And so,
but if we limp in as the 7th seed and face Columbus, what's going to be the belief walking into that home match against Columbus? How are we going to feel if we just limped into the playoffs, finished all the way down in 7th, square off against Columbus, and we're like, yeah, we got the home playoff game, but like, we crashed down the stretch, and we don't really think we can win against Columbus. They're the better team. Like, it's going to be
momentum is a real thing.
Yeah, it could be the same matchup, but it's going to be a different vibe, and that's why I think it's some of what is actually important right now is that energy, that mojo, and that vibe, and that belief.
Yeah. And we've, at least from this game, right? Like, this is an opportunity to kind of turn things around, right? I mean, when we went to Cincy and Columbus in that stretch, I was like, 1 point I'd be happy, and we got 4.
Yeah.
Right? So you never know what might happen in Miami, right? But with that said, I mean, this has been I love episodes where I can just sit here and let y'all go at it, And so, Vaughn, my man, where can we find you at?
On socials at VI Pullman, and I'm around. You guys will find me.
Yeah. Brian?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Bam Media. You can find all my written content at TopBin90.com.
And Jorge Gonzalez, TopBin90, excited about these last couple of matches. Like Vaughn said, let's build some momentum. Let's get some wins at home and get ready for playoffs, because it's a real thing.